Welcome to this week's episode, part 2 of luvsubbin.
Yes.
And in last week was sewer, and I just want to say thanks to everyone who commented about those Rhino sewer assemblies. Yeah, they're great, and they're a high quality tool. I just kind of like making my own, you know. And the other thing too is I really don't like looking at the clear plastic thing. I used to have a clear plastic one, and it was just gross. So
yeah, we didn't like watching what came out of it.
no, why do that? I can feel it and hear it come out, so I don't need the grossness of that. So yeah, but all good comments, but we're just kind of using a slightly antiquated system. But in this episode, we're going to show you what we have used for 18 years with our water, our fresh water system, as well as our electrical system. So stay tuned for that.
Should be interesting.
Yep. Okay, as we said, let's start with our fresh water system. The first thing you've got to have are your hoses, and we carry two 25-foot lengths of drinking water hose. It's important not to have the green hose. We all drank from green hoses when we were kids, but
somehow we survived.
Somehow. These days though, we do two 25-foot lengths of fresh water hose. The other thing, I also have a short length here, which is probably about
10 feet?
Yes, 8 feet maybe. And that's just simply because when you roll out 25 feet of hose and you're this short, you're like, "Argh!" So this is just that short little length that'll help me get to.
Sometimes you have longer connections.
Yep. So I have that little length. We also have our green hose. We use this for washing the airstream if we can, or any putting out fires in the fireplace.
Oh, okay.
Similarly, we have a garden nozzle that sits in the back of the bumper, and that's the screw arm for
just spraying things down, like when we had the mayfly incident, right?
Yep.
Or, no, it was the love bugs.
The love bugs, exactly. Sometimes they'll allow you to wash stuff, certain areas.
As long as you don't go too crazy.
Yep, so you need that stuff. Here's one thing you need, a can of Lysol.
Yep.
Okay, so when we show up at our campsite and the spigot, I spray the spigot with Lysol. And one of the reasons I do that, especially if there's a full hookup sewer connection next to the fresh water spigot, you never know if some rude camper has washed out his or her sewer hose with that spigot.
And some spray has gone someplace.
So the first thing I do is I spray the spigot with fresh Lysol. Our kits are containerized, so we have our water kit. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what's inside here. I do use the blue Camco filters. If you checked out this video here, which we'll link up above, we actually cut one of these open. It was pretty cool to see what was inside of them after a full season of camping. So we use the blue water filter. I know a lot of people have more intense filter systems, as well as the interior Berkey and Brita filter systems. We don't.
Barkley?
Berkey.
Oh, okay.
Barkley is Charles from the basketball, and Berkeley is that college way out west somewhere. So anyway, you definitely need some type of water filtration system, without a doubt.
Yeah, but the water still tastes good.
Here's a quick tip I'd like to pass on. Whenever we hook up our water filter, we do it right at the spigot and not at the RV. That way, only clean water goes through our hoses and connections.
I have a bag full of connections here. Some of the connections you're going to need.
Not all of these, but some of them.
Right, some of them. I have a Y connection. This is especially good during rallies, but you can also hook up this connection and have your water filter come off one side and your green hose come off the other. That's a good thing to have.
It is.
Water pressure reducer.
In case you get some crazy water pressure.
Yeah, I still debate this. I always use it. I'm like, how much pressure do you have to burst hoses and connections and fittings? And the RV has a built-in water pressure regulator, but I put one in anyway. You need that. I have a gauge here that shows the actual water pressure.
Have we ever used that?
I used to, and then I had no use for it. So this is something you don't need. So I would not bother to get this. I do like having this little L-shaped connector so that when you can connect something, if you don't want a kink in your connection, you can put this. This also helps on certain connections at the faucet to make sure you have that nice 90 degree. So 90 degree connection here.
Bad bag of stuff.
Yep, so
What's
that's
this
that.
yellow thing?
This yellow thing I always keep to flush out the hot water heater. And you can see me doing that here during part of our spring maintenance, but this is always good to keep. And you never know when you might need something like this. I don't know what else you'd use it for, but yeah, that's for the
Water
fresh...
plants with that.
Yeah, you could, I suppose. I have some plastic fittings here that I never use.
Some
Like
of this stuff we
caps?
inherited from my parents.
Yes. I do have a number of spare plastic plugs for the hot water tank. I have a total of 4 of these things. Be real careful if you are replacing this with a brass insert, because our tank is aluminum. Aluminum and brass will form a galvanic corrosion, and you will actually corrode the aluminum. So you don't want to switch to metal without that. That's why boats have zincs on them and stuff. So a couple of plastic things here.
And a good tip to go with it.
Yep. I have a number of washers for our hoses, so should our hoses start to leak, some spare plastic washers. I have a
pH.
Nope, this is the pH meter here, so when I have concerns with the water, I can test the pH of the water to determine if it's too acidic or basic. And
Now, is that something absolutely necessary, or is that something that's kind of handy to have?
If you're a complete dork, this is absolutely necessary. If you are 99.9% of RVers,
if you're otherwise normal.
If you're otherwise normal, I think you can get away without this. So I do not recommend having a pH meter. I also have a dissolved particle tester, total dissolved solids, because I will test the total dissolved solids against the standard that the Centers for Disease Control has, which I think is 300 parts per million total dissolved solids. This won't tell you what's bad, but it'll tell you if the water is bad. And so
whether it's drinkable or not.
Yeah, so if you're ever like in a squiffy area
or a campground that has questionable
fresh water, or in some cases in an emergency or boondocking, you have to get something.
Or if it looks funny coming out of the spigot.
Right, the total dissolved solids tester won't tell you what's bad in it, but it'll tell you if it is bad. So this thing is really pretty cool. We also use it regularly to determine how clean our freshwater tank is, to make sure it's within standards.
Once we sanitize
because we keep a database, and I think we're running usually around 50 ppm versus the standard of 300. So
not bad.
Yep. So that's our freshwater kit. And in the video's description below, I'll link all the stuff that's completely useful that you absolutely need, and the stuff like the total dissolved solids tester that only really I need. Nobody else in their right mind would need.
All right, sounds good.
That's freshwater system. Let's move on to our electrical connections.
All right, so one thing we did forget when we did the water series is that we also bring 2 6-gallon jugs of empty water containers, so that if we run low on water and we don't have water available at our campsite, we can refill. And when you do that, don't forget your water filter.
Okay, let's move on to our electrical system here. The first thing we'll always have are our cords. We carry a 110 15 amp extension cord, and this can be used for, you know, running anytime you have to power tools or something. We have a couple of these for our awning lights and things like this, so it's just good to have for just general extension cord usage.
Yeah.
We have our 30 amp power cord. If you checked out this video here, which we'll link above, we did have one of these burn out at one of the campsites.
And it was quite difficult to find.
Yep. So we'll also, I'm in the midst of putting together a second one of these. So we'll have that.
And it's going to have a spare. What's that?
This is the 30 amp extension cord. So this is what you need if you're ever having to run a lengthy power distance with air conditioning running. We'll also make sure, and I'll show an example of that, but whenever we make the connections, either to the extension cord or to the power cord or to what we'll show here, I always wrap it in black electrical tape. So make sure you have the black electrical tape to make that connection watertight.
Yep.
So we'll use that.
And what is this funny thing?
So this is one thing you are going to need, and this is the 50 to 30 amp plug. So
adapter.
yes, it's an adapter, and so you're going to need a couple of adapters. 50 amp to 30 amp, which looks like this. And remember, just because you've plugged into 50 amp, you've still got a 30 amp rig, so you can't turn on your air conditioner, curling iron, coffee machine, microwave. You only can pull the 30 amp, so make sure you're just wary of what you're drawing. We also have the 15 amp to 30 amp. So this would be, for example, whenever you're running, we use this primarily when we're running the 15 amp from the house. We'll put the 15 amp here, plug the 30 amp, and that goes right to the RV. And then the 15 amp to 30 amp, similarly, we have two of these. The 15 amp to 30 amp is also important when checking your electrical socket at the campground. You should always check it.
That's something important to have.
This is a must-have. So
because that's caught us a couple problems in the campgrounds.
It has, and you want to make sure your power going to your rig is good. So
and you want to make sure you're grounded as well.
Yep. And so in order to do that, these things are sold at like Home Depot, but they usually have the 15 amp connection. So we'll hook it up to the.
And by the lights, it shows you if it's good or not, right?
Yep. And it's got all that there. So now things you don't need. I bought these things, and if you tell, they're beautifully labeled and perfect and clean. I have never used these. These things have traveled 75,000 miles for 18 years, and they have never once been used.
What are they?
It's the same thing. You would hook your 30 amp here. You could put your, but they're just.
They're not as convenient.
They're not as convenient as these things. I don't know what I was thinking, but.
What's this thing?
This is a 12 volt voltage tester, so you can test your 12 volt systems. If you ever have a problem with the 12 volt, I don't usually use this. This is not something you need, but I have that. We have our lock here,
and
which
that's for this.
We lock our Autoformer. So every RVer should have a surge protector.
Yeah, some form of surge protection.
Yeah, and we use the Autoformer. And what an Autoformer does is if the voltage in the campground, because of being an old system, being an overly taxed system, or some type of fault, the voltage drops in the campground, this thing here boosts that voltage so that you can not damage some of your equipment. Because a lot of the equipment, like air conditioners and refrigerators and stuff like that, once it hits a certain low voltage, it'll start to have problems.
Keeps it even and level.
It converts some of the amperage to voltage, is the way, you know.
You could even do a little thingy, a little scientific formula.
I may have to.
Showing how to do that.
I may have to do that. Definitely have a surge protector and
or an Autoformer, which we like.
Yep, and both of these lengths are 25 feet, so we've got 50 feet of power cord.
Which is about all that we think is necessary, even in the worst campsites, to plug in, because we've had some very interesting configured sites.
Right, and the thing to remember too is the longer your runs, the more the voltage drop is going to be. So you want to keep your runs as short as possible.
That's a good point.
There's also a debate too that's interesting. I used to always coil all my plugs beautifully.
Your cords.
My cords, beautifully, like in Navy kind of fashion. But the more I realized that that was not really the right thing to do because it forms like an electromagnetic field. And that also messes with the voltage. So now, even if it's just a short run, I'll keep my cords stretched out and I will not coil my power cords. I will, however, cord my water hoses. They can't keep me from doing that. So that's kind of what you need for electrical. Again, we'll have that list in the video's description.
The important ones.
The important what you need and what you don't need. Well, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Love Subbin. As you can see, our road here is
a disaster.
A disaster as we try and...
It's a nice day. It's 54 degrees and sunny, a little windy, but I'm afraid we would get stuck.
Yes. So that's what's keeping us in right now. So if you like this video though,
give us a big thumbs up.
Click the subscribe if you haven't subscribed already.
And comment below if you have anything to add as far as electrical or water connections.
Absolutely, because we learn so much whenever we get the comments ourselves. We add things, we make improvements, and we very much appreciate them. We come out with RV and Airstream related content every Tuesday.
Thanks for watching.